Greetings and welcome to a special video for Canny Roller Crit for a Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video where we go over the brand new Balance Dataslate for Kill Team. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Do you find it useful and helpful? As you are you as happy as me? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, and a fill link at Element Games, and a fill link and discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yeah, let's get on with it. So the Balance Dataslate dropped just on time. You know, I would have liked this 2 weeks ago, but I'll take it now. You know, we don't have to wait till February, as a lot of people on Discord were proudly saying. So the app has been updated and I've seen everything. I've spent an hour reading it all. So I'm going to go through everything. Currently it's not live on the Warhammer community website, but you just have to manually re-update your app and then re-download the new rules. So let's get into it. So starting off, we have the core rules update. So for key principles, it says if an operative's stats or weapon stats are changed during action, apply that change once the action has been completed. But weapon rule changes are applied immediately. So anything to your weapons, like special rules like severe, you know, anything like that are applied immediately, but anything changing the stats aren't until the end of the action. So it's just a nice update. Then for firefight phase, when you're counteracting, you can select an expended operative with an engage order to perform a 1 AP action, excluding guard, for free. Each operative can only counteract once per turning point. That operative cannot move more than 2 or must be set up or wholly within 2 inches of its removed and set up again while counteracting. So this fixes a common loophole which we found extensively at Worlds, which was literally counteract guard. So you shoot, go on guard, then counteract and go on guard again. So that loop needed to be removed, which is nice. And this covers of operatives that can fly, because technically when they fly, they don't move, they are just removed and set up again. So when you could counteract, if you could fly or teleport, you wouldn't move 2 inches, you'd move whatever move value it told you to. So that's a nice tidy up there. Then for Killzone Gallodark, they've added the following rules to the guard action. So it performs any action, moves, or is set up, because you could technically teleport while on guard and not lose your guard. So that's been clarified, which is good. Then Vulcus has had a lot of changes. So the 3 barrels in Stronghold A are blocking and heavy terrain, because technically they don't actually touch the ground, so they never provided cover, but now they clearly do provide cover. And then F, the small ramparts and the edge of the vantage terrain are insignificant and exposed, so they now never count as cover, but they're just free to climb over, because before they technically would count as cover and you'd have to spend 2 inches to climb them, so that has been removed. And then the gap on the lower vantage terrain of Stronghold B is now accessible. So before we all had to climb over this, now it's just 1 inch. So instead of spending 2 inches, it's 1. So there's some nice freedom of movement through that terrain. Then we have the most convoluted rule I think I've ever seen for H. Now, instead of just having like the exposed position rule, because this clearly implies when they were playtesting and designing it, they thought they could fit either 2 models easily, or no one was trying to block the top point of focus off, because this is so crazy. So I'll read it through, then explain it. You cannot have more than 1 friendly operative on the highest upper level of Stronghold B at once, and that operative must be placed on one side or the other of that level. It cannot be placed in the middle. If this means that an enemy operative cannot be prevented from moving onto or being set up from the other side. If an operative's base is too big to be placed there, it must move or be set up as far as possible. Otherwise, it cannot complete that move. Then place it to one side instead and treat it as if it's been there. Hold it as far on that level as possible when it matters for checking other rules, e.g. control range, visibility, distance to other operatives. This takes precedence over rules for bases and being in a location it can be placed. So what this means is when you set up on the highest vantage point in Vulcus B, you have to, so technically it's a floor with 2 parts. So it's like a line in the middle. You have to set up on one of those sides. If your base is too big, i.e. it's bigger than 25 mil bases, so you can fit it there, but then if your opponent wants to move up for control range, you are considered to move aside, so you cannot physically block it off. If you are like a 40 mil base, which barely fits there, you now occupy a new dimension where you are there, but you're not there. You just remove yourself from the kill zone. I thought you would set up the below, but actually you just remove it entirely from the kill zone and then like teeter it there on one side of the vantage when you're trying to check stuff. So while this does now allow people to charge up and fight people on this vantage point, this is entirely convoluted. This is so confusing. It took me several read-throughs to properly understand it. And this is the only instance where you have a model that blinks into existence when it shoots or is charged, right? And then it disappears after that, but it still exists there. Like every time you check if it's visible, why not just make this like just give it exposed, or say like you're always a valid target when you're up there? This is like incredibly confusing. I understand why they're doing it. This is like one of the worst ways they could have implemented it. Next, we have a rules commentary update, so 1.1. How does the guard action work when the operative must spend an additional action point to perform 2 shoot actions with the same weapon, e.g. Warpcoven Astartes? The operative can perform the guard action for 1 action point as normal, but if it performs the shoot action during the interrupt, you cannot select the relevant weapon unless it had the remaining AP to do so during its activation. So if you weren't aware, Warpcoven, when they fire like their rotor cannon, it's 1 action point to fire and then 2 action points to fire again. So how this works is when you go on guard, like let's say you shot, repositioned, then went on guard, you would not be able to actually do the guard action unless you had the spare action points now, according to this. So what this actually means is you can't even, as a sniper rifle now for Angels of Death, shoot, then go on guard, right? If you're unengaged, because you would now have to hand 2 action points spare when you went on guard to do a shoot action. So this actually fixes a lot of nice loopholes, which is interesting. And then we have one change for universal equipment. So the heavy barricade can now be set up wholly within 4 inches of your drop zone instead of 2. I think this is actually a really good change, because while I like the heavy barricade, it was very difficult to use. It does now allow you to set up on some maps on the objective, which I think is fine. It just got really difficult to use this, especially in Gallodark and Beta Decima. So this is actually a really useful change. This helps a lot. So I like seeing buffs to equipment. Now we also have a new Approved Ops 2024 Tournament Companion. So this isn't Balance. This is just a new tool for tournament organizers. This was actually talked about to me back when I had that special Games Workshop preview at Nova. So this is really, really nice that it's finally come out. So it just has recommended terrain sets. So it says you've got 6 layouts for each kill zone, but then you also have 6 other layouts you can use as a TO. But it also says, which I think is really useful, you should set up your terrain layouts in advance so you don't change them each round. This is really, really good and keeps them static, which is generally nice. Then for crit op selection, what they've done here is grouped each of the 9 crit ops. So they say like secure loot and transmission are one group, upload intel coordinates are one group, and then extraction, sabotage, and power surge are one group. So they said try and mix and match between the groups. Personally, I would recommend you never play extraction or sabotage in an event. Some people also say you don't play intel and upload, but I think at least don't use extraction or sabotage. But it represents a nice mix you can use for your tournament. So let's say you're using a 3-round tournament, you could use bullet point 1. So we're going to do secure loot transmission or upload intel and coordinates. And then it says you can either select each round instead of randomly using cards or announce them in advance. It's up to you. I think this is a nice addition. Then it also goes over pairings, rankings, and then rulings. It covers draws. I won't go too into it in depth. It also goes over win path. This is really good for TOs. This is like a great TO resource. Covers strength of schedule. It's really, really good. I highly recommend reading through this if you're a TO or a player looking at becoming a TO. It's very, very useful. And now we go on to an updated classified, which we'll get into. So it goes over classification again. So the year 1 classified teams are yassified. So those yassified teams, for example, for this season are Octarius. So you've got all the Octarius kill teams there. When it comes to the next season, which will be in like October, then we lose the Octarius season for competitive events. Well, for kill teams events that are using the classified format. Games Workshop will be using the classified format, and they recommend you do it if you're running an event that has a golden ticket. but otherwise it's still up to you. The only interesting thing, look at Gallodark. There are 2 teams missing there. Let's flip it over. You can see that for some reason Chaos Co and Inquisitorial Agents are now in the Beta Decima season, so they have been given an extra year of life. Why am I being punished? Anyway, this is fine. And then it's got the Vocus season, and then it briefly mentions the afterword. So this is actually really useful. I'm glad they clarified classification and yassification again. It's really good. Those yassified teams, you know, it's once again, it's still optional, but just highly recommended if you're running a Golden Ticket event, because all Games Workshop events will be classified format, but just a nice update here. So let's start off with Blades of Khaine. I have a video tomorrow, which is very funny now because Blades of Khaine got updated. So they only had one update, right? I was hearing rumors of Doom posting where Blades of Khaine are going to be like incredibly powerful, but they've only had one change. So that changes to the Die Avengers. Instead of having accurate 1 when they are on or shooting at someone on objectives, they now have balanced. So this means if they have the ceaseless shooting ploy up, they have ceaseless and balanced, which effectively gives them relentless. I would much rather prefer accurate 1. I know that maths say blah, 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 but automatically ensuring a hit is really nice. But people really wanted this, so I guess it's fine. Look, Die Avenger players wanted this, so maybe this will help. You know, it does help if you're trying to shoot with like your shuriken weapons, but it's actually worse now if using crack grenades. So it's not really a buff, it's more of a side grade. So it's technically greater for people worrying about crack spam. So it's worse for crack spam, but it's better for your shuriken weapons. So there. Brood Brothers had one rules change, which is just more of a FAQ. If my operative isn't injured at the start of the action and then is incapacitated, roll a d6 for Cult Devotion as a strategy ploy. Do I worsen the hit stat of the weapon by 1 as a result of being injured? No, as an operative stats don't change during an action. So you're not -1 to hit when you're shooting while being incapacitated for that interaction. Chaos Cult had some big changes. So faction role mutation. If it's a mutant, you can turn it into a torment up to twice per turning point. Look, the team technically needed this, but then they did something with Fervent Onslaught, which I don't agree with. Friendly Chaos Cooperatives have the accurate 1 weapon rule, or the accurate 2 if that friendly operative is a mutant or torment. So, like, I don't think they needed that. Like, mutants, I would actually have been fine if actually they gave the cultists accurate 2. I think that would have been more interesting. This kind of really makes torment bombing way too good. So I don't know. It's like they needed a buff, but I think they've kind of swung too far in the other way. Like going to 2 torments, it now means they're just kind of like old Chaos Cult, but more explosive, which isn't good, but we'll see how that plays out. Deathcore have had huge changes. So Take Aim now gives ceaseless instead of balanced. So you have ceaseless when you're shooting. Fixed Bayonets now has ceaseless instead of balanced when you're fighting. And then Dig In, whenever an operative is shooting a friendly operative that's received this order, you can, if you retain any cover saves, you can reroll any of your dice results of 1 result, so you get ceaseless saves. Then, when your Siege Warfare ploy is up, instead of just giving Saturate, it also gives Accurate 1. And then in Death Atonement, note that that friendly operative is injured for the duration of the activation. So when you're incapacitated, when you do that shoot action, you count as being injured. So that's a specific change for that ploy. But my gosh, this team is terrifying again. Like it's back because look, if you've got 2 troopers with 2 cracks, they will have Accurate 1 and ceaseless, which is horrifying, absolutely horrifying, which is fine, you know, but they needed some punch. This is really interesting. I think Deathcore are back on the menu, everyone. This is really, really good. Nice to see. Farstalker Kinband have had a bit of a rework too. So for Cutthroats, oh my gosh, I've been playing Cutthroats wrong this entire time, but especially when into crew opponents. So now it says add 1 to the attack stat of Farstalker Kinband operatives melee weapons to a maximum of 5, because before it only said when a friendly operative is fighting, add 1 to the attack stat, so it didn't work when retaliating. Now it works when retaliating. So I guess everyone was accidentally playing buffed Farstalkers, but now it's legit. Then Prey has been changed. Its ranged weapons have the balanced and severe weapon rules. If the weapon already has balanced, it has ceaseless and severe instead. So you still do this before you've done a charge or fall back or reposition action, but this is actually much better. And then for Call the Kill, this has been changed again. Instead of giving accurate 1, it gives balanced. And now when you kill someone who has been marked for the kill, you pick someone within 6 and they have balanced instead of accurate 1. So this is technically a nice change there, although because they hit on 4s, it's technically better for stuff like the sniper and some of your better shooters. But I think accurate 1 was the better thing here. It's worse once again with crack grenade spam, but maybe that's why they've done it. Then for faction equipment, piercing and toxin shot, you cannot use the piercing and toxin shot rule during the same action. So I guess some people were arguing they could, which was weird. And then trophy once per battle during a friendly operative's activation, excluding the Hound. Before or after it performs an action, then you can use the benefit to get +1 APL. So they've just clarified the timing of it, which is nice, because otherwise it was just kind of open-ended. But now you've got some actual timing windows, which is really good. Otherwise, great changes for Farstalker Kinband. Then we've got a minor Fellgor change. So for the Shaman's Mantle of Darkness option, you have to be visible now and within 3. You didn't have to be visible before, so you do have to be visible. It's a slight nerf, like the slightest of nerfs. I would have liked to change to Frenzy, but maybe once Fellgor have dominated the game for 3 months, maybe they'll change it. Otherwise, it's technically a nerf. Gellerpox. Oh, my Gellerpox. It's so good. So, Gellerpox have seen some heavy changes. So for Techno Curse, at the end of the select operative step, if you're selected, if it's within your Techno Curse's infection range, the enemy operative is affected by the symptom of the Techno Curse. Each Techno Curse, its infection range and symptoms are listed below. So Barrel Warp, the old traditional one, is back to being within 2 inches of friendly Gellerpox infected operatives and 3 inches of glitchling. So this is -1 attack for ranged weapons. So before this was just within control range of your torments. Well, not torments, you know, your big guys. Then the Screaming Rust Spike. So this is if an opponent discards any attack dice as a result of fail, they take 1 damage. While within control range of friendly Gellerpox infected operatives, excluding mutoid vermin. I believe this was only with the Nightmare Hulks. And then for Viral Vox Static, the range has been increased. So it's now within 3 inches of friendly Gellerpox infected operatives and 4 inches of glitchlings. So that's the enemy operative's APL stat cannot be added to any removal positive changes that it has. So there's some more counterplay. I think this is really great. They needed this to make the Techno Curses more interesting and usable, so this is great. Revoltingly Resilient has been upgraded to mirror Plague Marines, so it now triggers on a 4-up instead of 5-up, which is so good. And then the faction equipment mutated symptoms has been changed, because before that increased the range of Barrel Warp. Now, note that this rule refers to an enemy to have been affected by a selected Techno Curse rule, e.g. Vulgar Spread the Glorious Gifts rule, is affected by your additional Techno Curse rule too. It just grants Vulgar's effect, because he gets secondary effects for his, Techno Curses, so that just spreads it, which is nice, right? Helps with faction equipment. And then, so mutated symptoms has been changed as well. So when you select a different Gellerpox infected operative to have a different Techno Curse, it's also affected by the rules from Vulgar. So it gets basically a double effect, which is nice. It gives this faction equipment more usage. And then Plague Bellows has been changed, because before it just increased the range from Nightmare Hulk ranges for their Techno Curses. So now whenever an operative is shooting a friendly Gellerpox infected Nightmare Hulk, if that operative is more than 6 inches from it, you can retain one of your dice results over 3 as normal success instead of discarding it. So it is useful in some scenarios, but you never take it, because now you take 2 mutoid vermin, then 2 other equipment choices. So that's actually really nice. That's really good changes for Gellerpox. I might go back to them. I don't think they're still like this. They're good now, but ooh, I'm tempted. Hand of the Archon have had an update. So for the cunning rule with your leader, when you pass, the first time you pass, you ignore each strategic gambit from the mission pack, if any, when determining this. So this means if you have selected your primary already, you actually can still pass to trigger your cunning to get +1 command points. Although they didn't close the loophole of technically you could pass first, and then if your opponent passed on the primary, no one gets primary. Or if your opponent selected primary and then you pass, I guess they wanted to keep it as an intentional thing, which I think is fine. A lot of people don't agree, but it looks like it's quite clear now. So at least some clarification with Hand of the Archon. Hierotek Circle of here have had some huge changes. When you reanimate, instead of coming back with D3 plus 1 wounds, you come back with 1. Then you heal D3 plus 1. So at most you're coming back with 5 wounds, which wouldn't make you injured, but is really bad for your Apprentech, your Despotech, and your Cryptech, which is great for everyone else. Unfortunately, if you're Hierotek. Magnify has now been fixed. So it says if you can use this rule if you do. Treat the active operative for the purposes of determining valid target, cover, and obscured. So now when you're magnifying through someone, you do measure from that operative instead of the original firer, which does clear up a lot of issues. It makes magnifying a lot better, but they needed this. Like they needed to work like this, otherwise it was very weird. The nanomine has been nerfed to 4 inches instead of a 6-inch bubble, which is fine. It goes back to its original range. It's still unlimited range, but it's now a 4-inch bubble instead of 6-inch. The Nightmare Shroud from the Psychomancer is heavily nerfed. It's gone down from an 8-inch bubble to a 4-inch bubble, and now it's added. You cannot retain attack dice, and you cannot reroll them, and dice results of less than 6 as critical successes. So you can still retain crits, but you have to roll natural crits. So this actually is great for everyone else. It makes the Psychomancer way more defensive instead of where it was currently, where it was like that 8-inch bubble was way too big. Like it commanded too much of the kill zone. So you now have a smaller bubble to work from. It's still very powerful, but not as good. Then the Technomancer got a nerf. Instead of healing 3d3, it only heals 2d3. So that's a nerf there. And then, remember, you can still only do it once per turning point. And then you've got the Tesla Weave. So this is a suggestion I'm very happy they've gone with. Not playtester. Once per turning point, when an enemy operative ends their charge action with a friendly Hierotek Circle operative within its control range, you can do this rule. You inflict D3 plus 1 damage. So it's now, instead of D3 for every operative you charge, if you charge multiple operatives, once per turning point, you take D3 plus 1. This was a needed change because they were just too damaging to play into as a melee team or any sort of charge. I don't know if people will still take Tesla Weave. Personally, if I was playing Hierotek, I would, but I know a lot of Hierotek players won't now. So these are some huge changes. So you only come back to life with 1 wound, then heal D3 plus 1. Magnify now works like a normal weapon. Nanomine is 4-inch bubble. Psychomancer bubbles 4 inches and doesn't block natural crits. You only heal 2d3. And now Tesla Weaver's once per turning point D3 plus 1 damage when someone charges. So a lot of needed changes because this team was very toxic. And I know they tried to dial it down, but they unintentionally made them more toxic. So these changes are great. Not great if you're Hierotek Circle, great for everyone else. Then we've had some Hunter Clade changes. So for the faction rule Doctrina Imperatives, the first paragraph has been changed to read, at the end of the select operative step, select 1 Doctrina Imperative to be a primary mode for your kill team until the end of the battle. Note that selecting a primary mode doesn't automatically give you the effects of that Doctrina Imperative for the battle. You must select it as a strategic gambit below. So you still select it as normal, and then once per battle, when you select your Doctrina Imperative, that's your kill team's primary mode, you can ignore its deprecation rule. This is slightly confusing. So it is the first time you select it, you only ignore the depreciation rule for that turning point, because when it goes to the strategic gambit, you select 1 Doctrina to be active until the ready step of the next turning point. So when you select it again, then the downside will kick in, which is not, it's like better than nothing, right? I still would have preferred the first time you select every Doctrina, it doesn't kick its downsides for that turning point, but they don't want to go back to that for some reason. Then the Bulwark Imperative Optimization has been changed to read, normal damage of 3 or more inflicts 1 less damage on a friendly Hunter Clade operative. So it's some nice damage negation, I guess, because before it used to give ceaseless saves, so some nice fixed damage negation is okay, but very matchup dependent. And then Firefight Ploys, your Omniscience Imperative has been changed. Uses Firefight Ploy during a friendly Hunter Clade operative's activation. Alternatively, you can use it when an enemy operative is shooting a friendly operative at the end of the roll attack dice step. You then inflict d3+1 damage on that friendly operative until the ready step of the next strategy phase. That friendly operative has an additional rule determined by its current doctrine as follows, and then additional text has been added to the third bullet point. If you use this ploy during a shoot action, this operative's save stat is changed immediately and it takes precedence over the core rule. So it means all of a sudden you could boost your save stat based on what, the buff you've been given, which is good. So Bulwark would immediately increase your save and then reduce damage you take, which is very nice, but you are taking d3+1. It's some nice changes, but I don't think it's enough. I think if you coupled this with just the depreciations only kicking in the first time you use them instead of only one, they would be much better. But I guess they want to be cautious with Hunter Clade, which is fair, because if you make them too good, they kind of become the perfect flex team, like balance between melee and shooting. But I think they could have buffed the doctriners a bit more in terms of not allowing the depreciations the first time you use each one instead of only one. Breachers have had a huge update. So we all thought they'd get +1 wound from stims, but they didn't. Instead, brace has been changed to now work in if you are either wholly within your territory or you haven't performed a charge, fallback, or reposition action during the turning point, normal and critical damage of 3 or more inflicts 1 or less damage on that friendly operative. This also means it used to be damage 4, but it's now damage 3, so it now negates more damage and also basically is always active while you're within your own territory, which is really great for defensive breacher play. That's very, very strong. Then you've got the Sergeant at Arms. Now, whenever you would use the attack or defense or the strategy ploy, if this operative's in the kill zone, it costs you 0 CP. And then once during its activations, before or after it performs an action, if you have your attack or defense order in the kill zone, you can either remove it and place it again or change the selected ploy to attack or defense. You cannot do both and you don't need to spend any CP to change the ploy. This is actually a really nice way to buff the team. I think this is just really good. It incentivizes them playing more defensively, which they can do with 11 bodies. It's really, really good. It's going to be really good on Gallodark because they're naturally going to be quite defensive. But it means you can still be charging, moving around in your own territory and still score your ploys, which is really good. And it's just really nice. I like this change. I am cautious of breacher buffs, but this is great. I really like what they've done here. It makes them more thematic, but also more powerful. Really good work. Then we have Inquisitorial Agents. Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, okay. Team selection. Your kill team, including any requisitioned operatives, cannot include more than 1 weapon with the piercing 2 weapon rule and cannot include more than 3 weapons with the piercing X, excluding piercing crit X weapon rule combined. So this means they now only can select 1 melter, which is probably going to be Kasrkin with a melter gun, but then they will select usually the heavy bolter, or they can select the plasma cannon servitor, their pistolier with the plasma gun, and then another plasma gun. So they've been toned down with their piercing a bit, but at least they're only 1 piercing too. So unfortunately, you still bring your toolbox, your toolbox of factions, but whatever. The Tome Skull just can't resurrect. Amazing. Why could it do this in the beginning? They've removed that. Thank you so much. That was just ridiculous. Now it can't do that. It's great. It's gone. That stupid skull. And then you've got the Mystic Operative, the Scry action. This operative cannot do it twice. I didn't realize it could do it twice. I completely forgot. Thank goodness you cannot do this action twice. So that's great. The Quest Keeper now hits on 4s like it should have, which is amazing. So it doesn't have a 3+ Power Fist. That is great. The Servo Skull is now once per battle, the equipment. So before it used to be once per turning point, now it's once per battle, mirroring how it used to work. And then for armored bodysuits, it doesn't work on the Tome Skull. I'm afraid the Tome Skull has dropped its bodysuit. It does not benefit from the armored bodysuit. Now, notable changes here. You still do get Ceaseless instead of Balanced for your Quarry. And while these changes do seem heavy-handed, the fact they still get that with Kasrkin, unfortunately, probably still makes Kasrkin the best for Inquisitorial Agents. And if you want to play Kasrkin, you probably still want to play Inquisitorial Agents. But they have been toned down quite a bit. It is some nerf, but I don't think it's as huge as people are thinking it will be. It's still nice. It's great. Oh my gosh. but the fact they can just take teams that hits on freeze kind of is a problem just with getting ceaseless. Kasrkin have had a change as well. Their changes, now the Recon Trooper isn't better in Inquisitorial Agents. It's just, it still has its, like, you know, 8-inch bubble of ignore and obscuring, but it no longer gives the free dash to Inquisitorial Agents, which, to be honest, never should have allowed. It was very strange it couldn't in the first place. This does make normal Kasrkin slightly better because they are now the more mobile force than when you run them in Inquisitorial Agent. The only problem is, I think Inquisitorial Agent is still the best way to run Kasrkin because of what bonuses they give. So it's like you are now sacrificing mobility if you go into Inquisition, but then Inquisition gives you better melee and tools and tac op selection. So, you know, I would have liked to see something else for Kasrkin, maybe a nice some way to buff them in a minor way, but we'll see how it plans out. Kasrkin still needs some more help in my opinion, partly because they are still unfortunately better if you run them in Inquisitorial Agents. Legionaries, they've had a big update, so Implacable. Brace yourselves, everyone. Brace in. It's been changed for Implacable. Weapons with the Piercing 1 weapon rule have Piercing Crits 1 instead. Now, you may go, John, but this doesn't mention Piercing 2. And I would go, dear viewer, you are correct. It doesn't mention Piercing 2 at all. So this ploy no longer affects Piercing 2. Piercing 2 eats them as normal. But now the issue is Piercing 1 goes to Piercing Crits 1. This was actually rumored quite a lot, and I don't really agree with it, but I would have preferred just like you get a severe save, so you get a crit save if you get a normal save. But they didn't want to go that way, I guess. So there's a lot of teams that just have severe with Piercing Crit 1 weapons, like Kasrkin and Tempestus Aquilons. So this is nice for them. And if you can just, let's say, can you roll a crit? You would be able to negate Piercing. So this is a good change. They needed this change, so this is great there. Quicksilver speed has been changed as well. It is now changed to whenever a friendly operative that has performed an action in which it moved during this turning point, not a playtester, is fighting, no longer is retaliating, worsen the hit stat of the enemy operative's melee weapon by 1. So this means it no longer triggers at all when you're retaliating, and it only triggers when you fought if you have moved. So this basically only triggers, it's actually very situational now in terms of if you start the turning point in combat, you don't get the benefit because you haven't moved yet. It is more beneficial when you charge and then double fight. And then the Slanesh side has been changed. It still works as normal, but only triggers the -1 to be hit from shooting if you're more than 6 inches from that operative. So this is actually a huge change because I would aggressively run up with Slanesh and like fight people. People would point blank shoot me and then be -1 to hit. Now you can't do that. It's better if you're running backfield. So Quicksilver speed is a lot worse, and I think it's good. We needed that. I think removing the retaliating part was a bit too severe, considering you still had to move to trigger it. But it was a needed change because it was way too strong. Maybe going forwards they might change it, but we'll see. Then for strategy ploys, Fickle Fates, instead of giving severe when you're shooting ready enemy operatives, now give ceaseless. Now, I know they were terrified of Tzeentch operatives because Tzeentch operatives here would have severe and then punishing, but if they had rending, they would have severe, rending, punishing, which was way too strong. But giving every legionary operative ceaseless, I don't think that was the way. Because now I don't really need to run them as Tzeentch. I can push up as Nurgle, have like a Piercing 1 weapon with ceaseless. I don't think that's good. I think this is a misstep. They should have changed it to something else because giving Legionary ceaseless, they needed ceaseless. This is actually a nerf if you're running Undivided. This is a boon if you're running anything that isn't Tzeentch. And Tzeentch is only slightly less effective. So I would actually say this is kind of more a side grade buff to Fickle Fates. Wow. That's weird. Then you've got mutability and change. If a warrior, if it's a warrior operative, the operative's Marks of Chaos keyword cannot be changed during this turning point. Because effectively, when you activated a Chaos Tzeentch warrior, you could spend a CP to give them +1 APL, then change their mark because it was the same time. So you could go, I'm going to start as a Tzeentch warrior because I'm a Tzeentch warrior. First, I'll generate my APL to go to 4 APL, and then I'll change to like Slaanesh. So you can't do that anymore. Then the Chosen Operative, now it only heals if it kills someone. And when it kills someone, you gain D3 +1 instead of D3 +3. This is exactly needed. It's basically what I said. I found it too weird if you struck with a crit and survived. This is way better. It makes the Chosen harder to just hide in combat, because what you'd normally do is hide in combat, strike someone with a crit, block them out, then heal D3 +3, and then do the same thing next activation. So this is really, really good. Makes it more honest. It still does heal a lot, but much more reduced rate, and it's more difficult to hide in combat. Then the Anointed has had a slight nerf. Note it can still shoot. You've got you're shooting Anointed running around firing his dualies. He can still shoot and he can still do unique actions. But now if he's a Nurgle Anointed, he cannot downgrade normal damage by 2. So it only works once. So it basically makes Nurgle kind of pointless for the Anointed, which it'll just force more experimentation, which is nice. The Balefire Life Siphon has been changed. You can only use this weapon. You cannot use it more than once per turning point. So you can only use it once per turning point. And that's nice. So you don't have to select the healing, but you always do. But you can only use the shooting mode once per turning point, which oddly mirrors what LVO recommended. But that's just a funny coincidence because not a playtester. But you still heal as much when you charge and fight, so that's fine. The Icon Bearer has been changed, and I actually really like this change. In the ready step of each strategy phase, if this operative controls an objective marker that isn't tainted, the objective marker is tainted for the battle and you gain 1 CP. Note that if any enemy operative, including enemy operatives, has tainted an objective marker, you cannot taint that objective marker. So now you have to be on an objective marker at the start of the turning point to get that free command point, and it has to be a different one. And in the mirror, if you want to get that second free command point, you actually have to go to the middle objective. So that's actually really, really cool. And it does reward aggressive play, because you could technically some objectives you can reach with a reposition on turning point 1 with the scouting option. Generally you can't, but it does mean turning point 2, you could secure the closest objective to get with +1 CP. Turning point 3, you can move on and then secure another objective. So you can get basically +2 command points instead of +4. So that's a really nice and thematic change. And then the Warrior Operative, once per battle, when a friendly operative warrior is activated, you can use this rule if you do change its marks of chaos. So they just made it once per game instead of taking D3 damage when you change, or only one operative can do it per turning point. So warriors are still quite flexible, but now you have to commit. So you can't, basically what I did was use the warrior as, if the warrior kept living, he would generally keep changing his marks. So this is a nice change. I think this is a really good change overall for Legionaries. They needed these nerfs. The only issue is I think they've buffed them with Fickle Fates, because Fickle Fates is technically worse if you were Tzeentch. Now it's better if you were any other mark. So if you were Slaanesh or Khorne and Nurgle, this is great. Obviously, if it's Undivided, it's worse. But this is whoa. I think Fickle Fates is a misstep there, but maybe they wanted to encourage some more mark diversity. Nemesis Claw have seen a change. So Comms Jammer is now 3 inches instead of 6 inches. This was, to be honest, really needed. The 6-inch bubble was way too big. It means the Jaeger matchup and Wrecker matchup is a lot easier for those opponents and is a little bit worse for Nemesis Claw, but I think this is a necessary change, so it's nice there. Novitiates have been changed, and I'm so happy. It's so good. Okay. Defenders of the Faith have been changed. When an operative is shooting against, fighting against, or retaliating against a friendly Novitiate operative that contests an objective marker, no longer one of your mission markers, in the resolve attack dice step of that sequence, you can halve the damage inflicted to a minimum of 2 on that friendly operative from 1 normal success. So it's only 1 success, and it has to be a normal, and it's only on objective markers. It's no longer like you plant a beacon and your faith is restored, or you're trying to recover an item, or you're trying to confirm a kill. This is good. You have to be on the objectives to negate, which is so huge, and now crit damage rolls for you. As someone who plays a team that relies a lot on crits, this is amazing. Sucks to be Novitiates. I'm so sorry. That's my bias. But this is needed because if you weren't aware, this triggered every time you would fight or shoot them, or they would retaliate. So now it only triggers on one normal success. It still triggers every time they fight or shoot, but it doesn't work against crits, and you can only have one normal success to a minimum of 2. So that's really good. Like, because technically if you did 2 damage, it would do 1 damage. So it's always a minimum of 2. So it's a bit nerfed there, but generally, if you're upset about this, Novitiates would not die. And then Blessed Rejuvenation has been nerfed. It used to do D3 plus 3. So where it used to be 3 plus however many fate points you saved. Like it would be D3, let's say you spent 4 acts of faith, you would reheal D3 plus 4. Now it's just D3. I think with this, Novitiates are perfect because before they would literally not die. Now they die if you push through enough force and if you have crits. So this is good. Nice counterplay. I think this is great. They are a little bit worse now, but this is really good. It's great for the health of the game. Plague Marines have had some changes. So for the 3rd sentence of their Astartes rule, you cannot select the same psychic ranged weapon more than once per activation. So it now means the sorcerer can double fight, because before it couldn't, because of its psychic. It just said psychic before. So the malignant planecaster, its healing can only be done once per turning point. It can't be done more than once. So this is the healing 2d6, maximum of 7 if you roll a 7 on the combined dice. So that's a nice change there. The flail operative has been clarified a bit. So if the D3 result is a 3 has been added, because to be fair, if you just roll a 3, it's kind of confusing. So now that's just been clarified. So if the flail does a 3 on a D3, then they get a poison token as well, which is nice. And the Icon Bearer now only gives 0 CP to your Contagion ploy if it's if it's within your opponent's territory. So you don't have to be wholly within, you just have to be within. It does make the Icon Bearer way more risky, because the problem you had with Plague Marine players, the less optimal players would push their icon up to the midpoint and hold it, but then just die because you've exposed your icon. Now doing this, you have to do it if you want the free command point, but then you're now basically exposing it to potentially dying. So you don't get it turning point 1, you probably don't get it turning point 2 unless you've like brazenly moved up. So it generally is only kicking in from turning point 3. So which does mean you may actually not always take the Icon Bearer, especially on maps with not much terrain in the mid zone, like certain Gallodark maps and some Vocus maps. So very interesting to see what happens with Plague Marines. I think they needed these changes, and I think it's just enough to tweak them in the right way. So we'll see how that plays out. Scout squads have had some changes, which is amazing. They can now select 6 forward scouting options instead of 5, and they've received a new additional one. So they've got tactical maneuver, which you can select once per battle as a strategic gambit. Select 1 friendly operative until the end of that operative's next activation. Add 1 to its APL stat, which is nice. You just get a free comms as a gambit, which is really, really good. It now means you have your leader giving someone +1 APL, who is also free APL, and then you can have someone else with free APL. So really useful there. And then targeting oculars, instead of once per turning point, up to twice per turning point. When a friendly scout squad operative is performing the shoot action and you're selecting a valid target, you can use this rule. If you do until the end of the action, that friendly operative's ranged weapons have the lethal 5 and saturate weapon rule. So this makes targeting oculars a lot better. Really, really nice, especially with anything, it's just forcing through crits. Really good. That's just great. I think this is a nice change. Everyone was kind of expecting +1 operative. I'm happy they didn't go to +1 operative. They are much better holding that design space as a 9 operative team. So this is really cool. I think it should offer some more experimentation and should be a nice buff to Scout Squad players. Then we've got Tempestus Aquilons. So for the strategy ploys drop and secure, it now lasts until the ready step of the next turning point when determining control of that marker. So this is just clarifying the duration, because technically you could argue without that wording, it actually does last the entire game. So that just basically means it resets those benefits. So that's just more of a clarification. And then for Firefight ploys, Hot Drop has been changed. So uses Firefight ploy after rolling your attack dice for a friendly Tempestus Aquilon that has either landed or dropped from advantage terrain at least 2 inches higher than the kill zone floor during that activation, and then you get Relentless. So this is actually really cool, especially let's say Turning Point 2 on Vocus. You would be in situations where you would this basically wasn't used, you couldn't use this after Turning Point 2. Now, if you've staged up on vantage points, you can now drop down and then shoot someone pushing up. So this is actually benefits defensive play. So it's a nice change to Aquilons. I think it's a nice tweak they needed. Anything else, I would wait and see after the meta settles, but there's a nice change there. Vespid have had a lot of changes. So remember, it's update 1.1. So now you never lose your communion points. You just gain D3 communion points. So usually D3 plus 1 every strategy phase, which is good. And then you change part 3 to read, whenever you would perform the pickup marker or mission action, excluding operate hatch with a friendly Vespid operative. So it means you no longer need to spend communion points to open doors. Vespid can open doors. Huge success. It's just... they needed this. They needed this. They have way more communion points. They now have unlimited communion points, which is great. And then the oversight drone, the aerial guidance action has been changed to also grant lethal 5-up and saturate. So this is actually really, really huge because it's effectively a 6-inch bubble of not only saturate, but lethal 5. And when all your weapons are dev 2 on crits, this is amazing. I would have liked +1 operative. I think that would have been completely fine, but this is a good starting point. And it now does reward you from staging with the drone quite aggressively. So this is really nice. I think they still need +1 operative, but now with unlimited communion points and a lethal 5-up bubble, this is really good. Really, really nice. Because remember, it's still a 6-inch bubble from the drone, but the oversight drone just has to be visible to the target. So this is nice. Void Dancer Troupe have had one change. This team has been severely overperforming, and their only change is now Mirror of Minds has a range of 8. So you have to be close to use Mirror of Minds. This is not enough of a change. Now, I actually think Void Dancer Troupe only need one other change, and that's changing Blades from Severe to Punishing. I think Blades being Severe is way too strong, and it also invalidates the other weapon options. Making Blades Punishing actually makes it a nice change. If you don't roll any crits, then you can use the other weapon options. And I think just having Severe kind of breaks them a bit too much, makes them way too reliable. They spent 3 years being amazing without needing auto crits. So I think they can live without crits. Unfortunately, that's the only minor change. So they're probably still one of the best kill teams in the game right now. I've heard rumors that the design studio loves clowns. It may be true. They love clown and goats. But at least the Shadow Seer now has to be within 8 inches to do Mirror of Minds. So it now has some risk. It has to commit, which is good, I guess. Warpcoven have had a lot of changes, and these are the most extensive changes because Warpcoven were the best kill team in the game. So for Boons of Tzeentch, Astral Bombardment, additional text added after the last sentence. If you select Firestorm or Mindburn as a sorcerer of Warpfire, whenever that operative performs a shoot action, select the Seek Light or Devastating 1 weapon rule for that weapon to have until the end of a action. It cannot have both. So it basically limits if you already have Seek 1, you can't, if you only have Seek Light, you can't get Dev 1. So it stops Mindburn just deleting people, which is really good there. Then for faction rules, the Boon of Tzeentch, Master of the Immaterium, it still adds 3 inches to most of their rules, except for the Temporal Flux. It only adds it to the distance of the first effect. So now you select someone within 9 inches instead of 6. They still can't teleport 9, and then so they can't reposition and dash and then walk back. But what they can do now is reposition, dash, shoot you, then spend a CP to dash, you get back, switch to conceal, and then teleport back, but that does use a CP. So they can still do it. It now costs a CP, which I guess is fine. And then Ethereal Warding. Whenever an operative is shooting a friendly Warpcoven operative, Piercing 1, weapon rules have Piercing Crit 1 instead. So this is Mirror and Legionary, so you no longer ignore Piercing 2, and anything with Piercing 1 goes down to Piercing Crit 1, which is an amazing change. Then for Firefight ploys, you've got Psychic Cabal. You cannot select a psychic ranged weapon that has been used by one other friendly operative during the turning point, and another operative cannot use the selecting weapon during this turning point. So it means if someone has already shot their psychic weapon, you can't double up, so you can't double mind burn. So this is amazing. The Doom Bolt is now 4-2 Dev 2 instead of 4-4 Dev 2. Amazing. This is perfect. It needed that change. The Mind Burn is now Seek Light instead of Seek, which is feels so good. Not a playtester, so good. Sorcerer of Warp Fire, the light action now gives Ceaseless instead of Relentless. Unfortunately, it still selects someone that's visible instead of a valid target, but at least it gives Ceaseless instead of Relentless, so that's a nerf there. And then for the Sorcerer of Temperian Reconstitution ritual action, you cannot perform this activation while within control range, or if a friendly operative has already performed that action during the turning point, so you can't heal twice per turning point or 3 times per turning point. Rubric Marines now have a 3-up save instead of a 2-up save, which was needed, unfortunately. The Zangor Icon Bearer only works on normal damage of 3 or more when negating -1 damage, so if you're pushing through crits, crit damage is still treated as normal, which is great. Making crits better is important. Crits matter. Then the Relic Hunter weapon rule. And then for Zangor operatives, the Relic Hunter is now once per battle instead of once per turning point. So only one Zangor warrior can do this. So this severely limits the APL generation they can do. Arcane Robes is now once per turning point instead of once per turning point per sorcerer, which is really, really good. It's effectively once per game per sorcerer now, but once per turning point is a great limit. And then Sorcerer Scrolls have been changed. Once per battle, when a friendly sorcerer operative is activated or counteracts, you can select a different boon of each for it to have until the end of the battle. It loses any it previously had, and it cannot be the same boon of each any other operative had. Well, any other friendly operative. So now if you're trying to switch to a boon, you're locked into that, and then you can't change it to anything else. So this whole update effectively kills the damage of the team, makes them more, less durable, and they are less flexible, which they needed. At the moment, this team, prior to these nerfs, was the best team. They, having an unlimited range saturate Seek weapon was crazy. At least it's only Seek Light. They are still a bit of a problem on Gallo Dark, but there's now counterplay. And if they switch their boons, they're locked in. They're very severely limited. They're still like an A-tier team, but they're amazing. It's just great. This is the changes we need. And, they may need more changes after this, but I'm really glad they did such a severe hit to the team. Amazing. So for the Balance Dataslate for January 2025 overview. Yeah. Oh, this is great. I'm so happy. Look, I was a bit annoyed that Void Dancer Troupe weren't really touched that much, but I saw everything else and I am so happy. It's so good. We had even Heavy Barricades made more usable. We had Vocus tidied up a bit. You still have that mystifying rule with how the Vocus Second Vantage works, where you blink out of existence if you can't fit on it. But we've had a lot of huge nerfs. It's going to be interesting how the meta shapes up. I'm really happy with this Balanced Dataslate. What I really liked is a lot of the buffs we got were quite extensive and thematic, and were in ways that don't affect if the faction can be taken in other factions, which I think is really, really good. This is probably one of the best Balanced Dataslates I've ever seen. Now, I will not shut up that Void Dancer Troupe weren't severely touched. As I said, changed blades from severe to punishing. So good! So good! Hierotek Circle, look. Hierotek Circle did get hit severely hard to the point where they may be really, really bad now, but they were way too good as a control team. Inquisitorial Agents were hit quite severely, but I think they're still one of the best Horde teams. Vet Guard are now amazing. The glow-up Vet Guard, Gellerpox Infected had breaches. That's really cool, and they're in ways that don't affect other factions they can be taken in. That's so good. Oh gosh, there were some weird interactions, as I said, Hand of the Archon and Cunning, but I guess all of that is intentional now. We are still missing some FAQ questions, but I will take everything we've gotten. We even got a approved ops tournament guide, which is great for TOs. Nemesis Claw saw some minor nerfs. Obviously, there was nothing for Ratlings and Wrecker Crew. Ratlings, their trip mines shouldn't be set up within 2 inches of accessible terrain, but I'm sure that will come like in 3 months' time. Like Plague Marines got a change. I didn't think Plague Marines would get a change, which is crazy. Nothing in the game ignores piercing 2 anymore if it's an elite kill team, which is great. You know, I forgot to mention that for Warpcoven. Zangor now don't ignore piercing weapons effectively, but who cares? They're Zangor. This is like so good. Chaos Cult maybe got blown up too much. Like having accurate 2 on your torments and mutants, as well as spawning 2 torments a turn, that's kind of worrying. But we'll see how that plays out. Novitiates got nerfed quite a bit. Legionary got nerfed quite a bit as well, although Legionary now get ceaseless if they're shooting ready operatives, which in my opinion is a buff. So that's kind of weird. Farstalker Kinband got glowed up. Fellgor got a minor nerf. Kasrkin, they're better outside, like they're slightly better outside of Inquisitorial Agents being more mobile, but that's about it. Inquisitorial Agents got, like, as I said, severely hit, but are probably still really, really good. I'm really excited. And you've even got like a nice buff to Aquilons, as well as Vespid. Vespid effectively have unlimited communion points, have a lethal 5-up bubble from the drone, and can open doors. As I said, celebration, insect race. Insects keep on winning. They open doors. They open doors now. Oh my gosh. They open doors. I'm really happy. This is so good. Was it worth the wait? Yes, technically. Should this have dropped 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago? Yes, 100%. This was way too late. But, I'm so happy. Oh, I'm so happy. And it's like Legionary. I really like what they've done to Legionary, apart from giving them ceaseless. That's weird. But I'm so excited. The meta is crazy. Like, oh, it's going to be so good. I can't wait to see what happens. And this video is likely going up before the Warhammer community article. So once the article's update, I'll put in the episode description. But that's pretty much it for me today. Please remember to like and subscribe, as well as comment. Are you as happy as me? Let me know in the episode description. What would you like to see? I mean, you know, in the comments, let me know. I remember I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, an affiliate link Element Games, an affiliate link and discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. And I'm going to quickly shout out my patrons. So for my adepts of the crew, I have Tom, Supercow, Sam, Nick, Mercenary Q, Mr. Meatwad, Lucas, Jeremiah, Graham, Fangsu, Draken, Dave Meatswell, Darcy, Dan, Dad of Goldens, Chris, Amorphium, and then for my veterans of the crew, I have Sam, Jura, and Mark. So thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. But I'm so happy now. This is great. I've got some new Kill Team games tonight and tomorrow night, which is going to be amazing. It's so good. I've been waiting so long for this. We all have. It's great. It's great. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm happy with the Kill Team I've selected. I can't wait. The next 3 months should be amazing. Oh, I can't wait to see what happens. It was so good. Shouldn't have taken so long, but I'm so happy. It shouldn't have taken so long. Really, why was it so long? But it's amazing. Oh, I can't wait to see. Can't wait to see what happens. I've got so much content I can do now, even more than I had planned already. But remember, no matter what happens in the Balance Dataslate, you always have a chance to win, as long as you can roll a crit.